What's going on, everyone? It is me, Matt, 7 Psycho, and welcome to the very first episode of my podcast called From the Crypt. If you've known me for a while, then you guys actually will know that this is something I have tried multiple times to do, and I've wanted to do for a very long time. Pretty much last May, I actually had these same exact forms out, but I never followed through with doing the podcast, so I'm super excited today to kick off today's episode. We've gotten some really juicy and interesting questions, and I really think some people will be really interested to hear some of the things that I will be talking about. So I hope you guys enjoy this very first episode, and let's jump into the podcast. So our very first question is, what are your goals that you hope to achieve for this year? Content-wise, I would hopefully like to try to get 500 on YouTube and 1,000 on Twitch, and it'd be a really cool expectation if I'm able to actually stay at it. But other than that, I'm kind of just looking for consistent stability in my life right now, because for the last 2 years, it's been really hard to find that, whether I was in North Carolina or New York, and it just became really eventually hard to continue what I was doing. It felt like anytime I kind of had some type of stability, whether it was like content creation or real life, something would always happen where it would lead me to having these periods of being inactive or just kind of unable to do things that I wanted to do. For example, when I came back from TwitchCon, I actually had a really big dilemma where I was stuck between either wanting to take a hiatus for a few months because I knew that this was going to be a really stressful year graduating, but there was also a part of me that really just wanted to get right back at it, start streaming again, and that's what I was actually going to originally do. But 2 days after coming back from TwitchCon, I was hit with a really devastating hurricane that devastated the whole entirety of Western North Carolina. So it felt really hard for me to actually follow through with that, and ultimately I felt like the hiatus was probably what I should have chosen. But I think my real goal with content creation is just pretty much finding a community again and just also establishing myself as a creator. I think I've changed a lot in the last 2 years in that I've shifted from a lot of different genres of video games, and I think I just also want to follow through on promises I make or things that I planned. Like, I still plan to get a Reaper tattoo, I still plan to try different snacks around the world from different challenges, and I'm just really hoping to kind of find some type of consistent stability overall. What is your most embarrassing college tale now that you've graduated? Oh boy, this one is a bit difficult to actually talk about, but I guess I could say there has probably been definitely worse that has happened to other people during college. But when I was in my first year living at university in my apartment, I had ordered Chipotle to be delivered. On my first year, I didn't have a car because my mom was a bit nervous about me driving in the mountains, and to be completely honest with you guys, it's actually super dangerous up in the mountains, and I've seen a lot of wrecks in the last 2 years. But because of that, I actually had to rely on my roommate most of the time, which felt horrible and kind of awkward. So sometimes when I was desperate enough and I didn't really have a lot of groceries, I would spend the money on Uber Eats. But that's not the story that I'm getting at here. So I used to have to walk to a parking deck right next to my apartment building to get my food, because in order to get in my apartment building, you needed a code or a key to get into the building. So all deliveries were always dropped off in this parking deck, and you always had to walk to it. But as I was walking back from getting my food, I somehow must have been disassociating so bad that instead of walking into my apartment 215, I actually walked into the apartment 315, which I don't even know how I did, because that's a whole different floor. But I pretty much walked in, which was even worse that the door was unlocked, and I instantly made eye contact with this girl who was putting groceries away, and I had a split thought that I was like, dude, why is this fucking girl in my apartment? And I shit you not, I quickly looked and glanced over and saw it was 315, instantly apologized, was super fucking mortified, and I don't even know how badly I was disassociating to have done that, but I quickly walked out and apologized. And like I said, I heard the girl in the background as I was walking away nervously go Caroline, as if to get her roommate. And even to this day, there's still times where I think about how that happened and how incredibly awkward that was for me. And but I also feel like everyone is always going to have a story in college that was super embarrassing, and that kind of experience is almost a staple of college life. So outside of that, I've always been pretty self-aware, sometimes too self-aware of my own good to kind of avoid any other real embarrassing experiences, but that was definitely a tough one. Do you have any big ideas for future episodes? Which are you most excited about? I do. Right now, I have a few ideas in mind, actually. Some to mention are actually talking about the reality of doing content creation full time. I want to be really transparent during these next few months how this process is going and whether it works out or not. But I also do have plans to talk about the potential that Fortnite Ballistic holds in the FPS scene pretty soon here, just because I think it's a really untapped market for content creators and for people who are really into FPS games. But I also will be talking about some early 2000s, media now, like that's been resurfacing a lot of nostalgia. So there's always endless things I am thinking about and always wanting to talk about. So I do want to try to take it a bit slow with seeing how this podcast does and how much people actually end up enjoying it. But I would definitely do also more Q&A style ones in the future if it's something that people end up really liking from this one that I'm doing right now. But I think I'm more excited for future episodes where I have friends come and join me. I would love to have that be something in the future I do, because I always think like another person or two could always really make podcasts really entertaining. Alright, we're finally getting into some of the Reaper questions here because I knew that was going to pop up, but this person wrote, favorite Reaper season and why? This is really tough, just because I would definitely say it's a tie between season 1 and season 2, and really that was because everything back then was just like so much more simple like than what Reaper eventually became. And I mean, really those 2 seasons are probably when I enjoyed Reaper at its most. You know, season 1 was just kind of a basic SMP where we had a lot of goofing off and with one another, and it's where I really met for the first time some really great people and creators who are now even my best friends. But I mean, there was really no big plan for the server at the time, so we were just kind of like fucking around, just having small, like silly small events or builds, and it was just really peaceful in season 1. And for season 2, it was the first season where I actively participated in server lore. And as much as I really do not enjoy Minecraft lore, I had actually really enjoyed the role I played during that season. I was the Grim Reaper, but kind of in a villain style, and I think what I admired the most from that season is that we actually didn't have the outcome that everybody wanted. We actually went with an outcome that I feel like is pretty rare, where the world was actually doomed at the end. But it really helped me break out of my shell as a person, and I think outside of that, that season especially had so many special memories that, you know, I think I really cherish. You know, it was the peak of Lethal Company being popular. We were always on a game playing with one another, and despite some of the issues and drama faced, I hold a lot of like love for season 2. Biggest motivation for becoming a full-time content creator. So I know this might sound a little cringy, but I'm one of those people who believe you aren't truly living if you don't try to chase a dream at least once in your life. And for me, this has been a dream of mine for quite a while, especially when I was at TwitchCon. It kind of just solidified how much I really love what I'm doing, and I've been kind of creating content since I was like 10 years old, so I've always had so much passion for it. I mean, I think my first things that I was trying to do was an SNL style skit show called the 5-Minute Show, where I actually like literally at 10 years old would write scripts for people in my class to act out. And then kind of after that, my first real like YouTube content was doing a Minecraft channel, which some of you might know that I did this, but I had a Minecraft channel for about a year where I would play on a faction server and I would pretty much record the raids that I would do. And it was just like, I'm not gonna lie, it was like peak Minecraft for me, especially during that. But I mean, ultimately I really love sharing what I do and like sharing the games that I play, you know. It's never really been about the money for me, but kind of just rather building a community around me that leads with a positive impact. Because right now I think the biggest issue in like the, you know, streaming era or just content creator era is that not many creators are doing that right now, and that I think the toxicity is at almost an all-time worst. But you know, outside of that, this kind of felt like the perfect time in my life to start this path. I've spent the last 4 years nonstop taking classes 24/7, and this is the first summer that I've had to myself in a really long time, you know? I knew like when I was graduating, I wanted to give myself a break after, and that I was also going to be going home and taking care of my grandma full time. So I don't know, like I said, after TwitchCon, I was just more inspired than ever to do this, and I feel like I'm really grateful because I have a lot of support from my mom and everyone around me, and I feel like that's really hard for people to have when they admit something like this or do something like this, you know? And like I said, I don't know what will come in the next few months for me or what to expect, but that I'm really taking things one day at a time, and that I do have a plan set in motion for me. I mean, while I do strive to obviously reach the point where I could potentially do this full time one day, I'm also having that really realistic reality that 99% of this probably won't work out, and I'm fully prepared to put myself out there to find a job at any given point I feel like I should. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's really up to how I make it, and I'm planning to make the most of it and see where it goes. Alright, this person X, do you plan to do another Minecraft server? Ooh. I don't really know how to answer this one because it's a yes and a no. I won't lie, since Reaper has ended, I've had so many thoughts and urges to do a server again, but I've mostly stopped myself just because of like how truly burnt out I was from the game. I don't really know. I mean, I do think eventually in the future I will have another Minecraft server, but it probably will most likely never be as high of a scale as of what like Reaper SMP was, truthfully. I think right now the Minecraft like SMP genre has been really overplayed out, and that it's actually harder and harder for content creators to not get bored or lose interest on servers. I mean, I've seen so many people's interests kind of shift more towards the Minecraft tourney scene or events and just kind of rather do like a competitive vibe, or sometimes they would rather play on like a month-long SMP than like seasons, you know? The only ones that I still see really active in the SMP community still are really the ones who are in it for like the roleplay and lore, and truthfully, like I've said previously in this video, I've never really been much of a lore or a roleplay person on here, like at all, if I'm being honest. What is your second favorite color? Why isn't it your first? I would say that black is my second favorite color, but except it's really not, just because I do just only love the red and black color scheme, as it's been pretty obvious in my branding. But my second favorite color would have to probably be a tie between blue and purple. A little fun fact to share is that my original mascot I had years ago was actually originally blue and black, and it had an op instead of an AK rather than the black and red one I have now with an, I mean, it has an op rather than the AK that I have now with the current one I have. But I don't know, I've always been so drawn to the color scheme of red and black even since I was a kid. It kind of just always felt like the right colors to have, especially for this mascot, and that like I think red in the last few years has just really grew on me compared to like blue as a kid. So I would probably say red first, blue second still. What is your bachelor's degree in? So my bachelor's degree is in science. I technically studied electronic media broadcasting in communications at my university, which is pretty much learning a multitude of things in like the television and film field. I pretty much was able to learn how to like run things behind the scenes, whether it's in the production room, on the set itself, and I think what I really enjoyed about it is it allowed me the ability to learn how to edit on Premiere Pro, Audition, DaVinci, all these different types of programs. I took classes on how to do news packages, how to script write, and it gives me basically a ton of opportunities to find a career in the media field and just like the television and film field. So there's different fields I can go in, there's different ways that I could apply what I've learned to different multitude of different various of jobs. So I do feel like while there is a really complicated job market, I'm really confident I could eventually find something in this field. I think also what I really like about it is that it's also helped me become better as a creator by learning how to promote almost better quality content, or just even like little things that I can improve on. So the way I see it, this degree kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm doing now and potentially a job in the future. Why 7Psycho as a username? So outside of being called Matt, I used to have the actual like username Psycho on a website that I went on in my early preteens and stuck with it since. Like I had like the actual OG, and it was really cool that it was available back then because not really back then you could find a lot of OG names. So I kind of just stuck with having the username Psycho because I don't know, it was just really cool, and I never was really able to think of anything outside of that since. But honestly, as I've gotten older, I actually really don't like going by Psycho anymore, and I've actually wanted to rebrand for a while. I don't even really know what to rebrand into. I've had a lot of time to try to like brainstorm and think, and I feel like the problem with having a Grim Reaper as a mascot is there's so many generic Reaper names out there, dude, that I see, or I don't know, I struggle to come up with something original with that mascot and that brand, you know? I feel like the biggest issue is that like the name Psycho actually isn't that much of an appealing name as a creator. I feel like now, you know, the problem also with that too is that I've also established myself pretty heavy with that name. So it's like if I do change it, I don't know if it's like a good or a bad move, but I feel like I'm still like small enough as a creator where I could rebrand and it still could be okay. But outside of that, the 7 is really just because I was born on November 7th, and to me it also looks like a Grim Reaper scythe, which is honestly pretty cool if you really think about it. So I feel like the 7 is a part of me one way or another, you know? It's also my lucky number and just something that I consider to be my number. I don't know, maybe sometime soon I'll ever rebrand if I ever get there or ever figure out what it exactly would be. So okay, so this will be our last question of the video, and this was a question that was actually asked twice in the forums, to which I honestly did expect to happen, but for our last question of the episode, 2 individuals had asked, and why did you end Reaper SMP? Obligatory, what happened to Reaper SMP question? if you want to discuss it. So I had kind of the realization after posting the forums for the first time on Twitter that this was actually bound to pop up in the forums. I wasn't really too surprised when I seen this be asked twice, and I think it's honestly a completely valid question to have asked that, because I never really fully explained why Reaper ended, and especially why so suddenly. So I'm not going to get into full detail of things here, and due to it involving a multitude of people and just serious private matters, but I will start off and say that I started Reaper at a really bad time in my life. I started the first season pretty much 2 months before starting a new chapter in my life with moving to North Carolina, and at the time, I completely underestimated how much time I would actually have to run the server in the 2 years I would be there. It was a really big problem of Reaper, and a lot of the problems with Reaper was because I was really inactive at times as an owner, where I wasn't really able to be involved with the community as much as I wanted to, and I think each season it became more and more of an issue for me, where I constantly would start each season knowing it would have horrible timing for me, and really it would. I would always start it either like a month or two before I was moving back to North Carolina or after I was moving away from North Carolina. So there was never really a time in my life where I started a season and I was like, yeah, this is the time where I should do this. I mean, really, having an SMP during these last 2 years was so stupid of me, because it was just so much horrible timing and it put so much pressure on me. And honestly, like, I was faced in so many situations alone where I had to be an adult and handle responsibilities in my life outside of a Minecraft server. So I guess I thought by having a bigger staff it would help, but at the end of the day, it kind of just ultimately seemed like it created more issues for me. And I don't say this about all of the people who were in Reaper staff at all, by the way. There's a lot of people here who I could sit and talk about for hours on what they did for Reaper and their impact, but I do think, having too many people in a server at a point just kind of like became too much for us to handle. When we first started Reaper, it started out by being like a 30 to 40 person server of just our really like close inner circle friends, and by season 3 we pretty much were almost at about like 100 members. It became so overwhelming and also so hard to say no to people, and there were a lot of times where I was pressured to actually just keep accepting people because they were in a friend group. So it just kind of felt really pressured by me and other admins to upkeep the server, or a lot of the other issue was to have lore start within the first week, or I don't know. There was just sometimes where we felt like we had to meet these deadlines for events that we planned to have, and it was just a lot. I think at the end of the day, as much as we wanted to make it a bigger scale server, individually we also had too much going on in our lives to be able to handle that. Outside of that, there was always just a lot of drama going on in the server. I'm gonna be very transparent with that, which I wasn't prepared to deal with at all. I mean, like, really, I'm gonna be so truthful. I would be over here fighting for my life every day, going through it IRL with some heavy shit stuff ongoing, and then the next thing I know, someone is being creepy to another person, or some friend group is having a falling out, and I'm put in this really awkward and uncomfortable position. And sometimes, like, it made me realize that because of my own past trauma, I was feeling tremendous anxiety to even get involved, and I held back a lot. And it just ultimately, all the drama took a terrible toll on my mental health, and it really ramped up the already burnt out like Minecraft feeling that I had. And like I said, while the Minecraft community has like lots of great people and creators, it also has very immature and malicious and petty people too. And I can get on a whole issue, like a whole podcast episode on all the issues that I feel like is with the Minecraft community and why it's like so toxic low key. But people are very quick to twist stories or to throw false accusations out in the air. And I mean, these could be people who you thought were extremely close to you. I'm gonna be upfront, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't the most perfect owner. This was my first time ever running an SMP, and I never really was involved in the SMP community before this, and I made tons of mistakes, tons of mistakes during my time. But I think what's important is that I always apologized and did the right thing with full honesty, and I think in a way it's actually helped me grow as a person, and also helped me know who to trust. But at the end of the day, things kind of happened that was outside of my knowledge and control during the recent hiatus, and I was really put in a horrible position by people who were, I felt like, intentionally trying to set me up than rather care about a real underlying issue at hand. And very quickly, just it felt like everybody became very untrustworthy around me, so things just kind of slipped through the cracks. And I just decided to do what was best for my mental health at the time. When I shut down the server and the Discord and everything, I felt like I didn't really owe anyone an explanation, and that I just mentally needed to take care of myself. But I do acknowledge now how impulsive it was for me to delete the Discord and not really give a proper response. I did make a post on Twitter. I'm not sure how many people actually ended up seeing about like its closure, and I did apologize for not doing so when I first did it. Unfortunately, a malicious individual who I had trusted had regained access to the Reaper Twitter and decided to wipe all its tweets in history, which really fucking sucked for a lot of people, because it's really hilarious. At the end of the day, it's the same people who will preach about internet safety to you who are usually the most dangerous ones to interact with. But you know, it didn't really faze me at all, because I regained the account like 2 weeks later after talking to support, and by then Reaper was over. I really couldn't give a shit, you know? I've been at peace with ending Reaper, to be quite honest. You know, while I miss it terribly, my mental health has drastically improved without the weight it once had on me, and it's kind of also allowed me to take a step back and view things in a way I haven't before. So it's just been so nice to just also save money financially, because for how much I was putting into the server and how much damage it was doing to my mental health, it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it at all, you know? And I think, you know, I'm in a place, ironically now, where I do have more time than ever for a Minecraft server, but I do know that time also heals all, and I think that taking a step back from the community is what's best for now. I don't know if I will ever bring Reaper back itself. If I were to bring a Minecraft server, maybe I'd bring it back under something else, but it would be probably completely different than what it was before, and also a lot smaller without pretty much making the same mistakes in the past. So I hope this answers a lot of questions about those who were left completely in the dark about where the server went and why I chose to make these decisions. Obviously, I do feel like it was owed to people, and that enough time has passed where I feel like I'm able to talk about it without it being so heavy. And yeah, if you've been listening this whole time, this is pretty much going to be the end of my very first episode. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to my first ever episode of From the Crypt. I actually really enjoyed the questions asked and being able to finally start this podcast fully. So in the next episode, 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about the reality of content creation full time, how I've been planning for it, different types of things I'm experimenting as a creator, and how to know if there's been any real success so far. So until next time, I'll see you guys from the Crypt.